I'm Reggie Hicks. Welcome back, your host for this podcast. I want to welcome everyone watching on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Tonight we're talking to the women. Prostate cancer is often called a man's disease, but tonight we're talking about the women who live it every single day, the ones who carry the fear, the strength, and the silence, sometimes all at once. Join us for a candid conversation as the women tell their stories behind the partners and their prostate cancer journey.
So we have a confirmation with a second opinion that he definitely has prostate cancer.
Welcome back. And again, I'm Reggie Hicks, your host. I want to welcome everyone watching on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and of course, those who are listening on your favorite podcast platforms. We want to remind you to share, like, subscribe, and engage. And as we close out Women's History Month during this taping, it's apropos, we think, that we shift the lens a bit from the patient to the partner, from the diagnosis to the household, from what's seen to what's unseen. I'm honored to be joined by a special group of ladies that I know from various parts of my life, from school, from church, from family, and actually from right here in this space, because my wife is going to be joining me and helping me and co-hosting this particular episode of the podcast. And welcome, ladies. Welcome to the If You Are My Brothers podcast. I know each of you. However, our audience doesn't. And so we want them to get to know you a little better. So I'm going to start with Miriam. And Miriam, just tell us your name and your husband, who's been on the show before, that you just found out when we were in prelims.
That was funny.
It's like, what? He's been on the show. And also one word, or if you have a couple of words that kind of describe your journey with him through this health challenge.
Absolutely. Well, I'm Miriam Dingle Liggett, and I am married to my husband, Tony, for 43 years. He was my college sweetheart. And I would say that there are two words that describe this journey, and it is faith and courage.
Thank you. And Janet, family member, you're up next.
Yes, hello, and thank you for having me. My name is Janet Page Smith, and I'm married to David Mark Smith. We've been married 46 years this year. I'm an Army veteran, and I'm a retired Georgia school teacher, and I write for a Christian magazine, Guidepost. Two words to describe my journey, my husband's journey with prostate cancer, is our new normal.
And so we'll go to my definitely better half, Anita.
Okay, so I'm Anita Stokes Hicks, and I am Reggie Hicks's wife of 27 years. And I would say two words to describe our journey, or my journey, would be faith and hope.
And we have Peaches McKeedy.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Peaches McKeedy. My first name is actually Lauren, but they call me Peaches, so I go by that. Anyhow, I'm still a teacher. I've been teaching almost 30 years in DeKalb County school system. John and I, we've been married 40 years. He was my college sweetheart as well. We met at Oakwood University. Two words to describe the experience. I would say faith and trust as well.
Great. So now we got to know everybody. And did I know that your first name was Lauren? I'm so used to Peaches. I knew it, but I didn't remember it. So
when I was born, that was my name, Peaches Lauren Peaches. So.
And then you moved to the Peach State. So there you go.
And then I moved to the Peach State. It's a story behind my first name. My grandfather, who was in World War II, he actually worked on the peach farm here in Georgia. And when I was born, he named me Peaches. So.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that either. That's cool. So ladies, while we're here, Anita, I'm going to start with you. What did you feel in the moment when you heard the diagnosis? And what didn't you say out loud?
Well, I'll have to say I could say shock, but because I had been so close to the research and all that you had done prior to being diagnosed, it wasn't total shock. It was shock that you received the diagnosis, and fear Yeah, there was some fear there as well.
How about you, Janet?
I was kind of like Anita because you had coached me through. You had actually coached me through the PSA, going back, looking at his PSA results for the last 3 years. And I actually knew before he knew. So when we went to the doctor together, I think you and I had talked about it, watching those numbers go up, his age, those types of things. So when we got there, I just was watching him and I knew we were going to be this is the way the doctor gave it to me. He says, I've got good news and I've got bad news. He says, I'm going to give you the good news first. We caught it early. The bad news is you had prostate cancer. So my first thinking was, okay, let's get this. Let's get this done. It's going to be something new. I was kind of looking at my husband and looking at his face and his reaction was like total disbelief. I had to work with him because it was like, I do? How can I have prostate cancer?
Was there anything that you didn't say that you wanted to say when you heard it?
Well, I said it once we got out of the office. I said, honey, we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this together. And I'm like the ladies, I have a very strong faith. And he was healthy. He was totally healthy. That's where the disbelief came in because of him being so healthy.
What about you, Miriam? When you heard it, what did you feel in the moment? Because I think Tony talked about how he found out. I mean, because he was going through some other health challenges, if I remember correctly. Is that right?
That's correct. I mean, it was like the double whammy. He was going through, he'd had surgery, emergency surgery for cervical spine injury that we didn't even know he had. You know what I mean? He was walking, he was losing sensation in his hands and feet. And we luckily had this incredible primary care doctor that did all the tests. And so when we went to the neurologist, he said, basically, you're one bad fall away from being totally paralyzed. And so they put him in the hospital the next day, he had surgery. So now here we are trying to learn to walk again. He was in a wheelchair. It was terrible. And then we find out after we're going through all of these appointments that he has prostate cancer. So for us and for me, it was very overwhelming. He couldn't believe it. But we were grateful because without the spine injury, we may not have found out about the prostate cancer. So we realized pretty immediately that we had a reason to be grateful.
And it was caught early, which means you have a much better chance of survival. And Peaches, what about you? What did you feel in the moment? Was there anything you didn't say that you wanted to say out loud?
The thing was, John was in his early 40s. This happened maybe, 16 years ago? And I'm like, this could not be, because I usually would go with him to get the exam done. The two of us would go together because we just wanted to know. And then I think every 6 months or something, the final test came back positive that he had it. And I'm like, oh God, he's so young. Isn't this for men in their 60s and up? He's just 40 something. And I never said why him or whatever. We had to deal with it. That's basically it. But my question was, God, he's so young. What's going on here? And then he started to do some research. And then he found out that it ran in his family. So he has a history of that. And so it didn't matter if he was young or not. He ended up getting it. And the thing was also that John was a vegetarian. He was a good eater. So that was a shocker for us as well, because we thought we were doing everything right, eating well, and so on. And still he came down with it. So that was surprising for both of us.
Did your role in the relationship change like overnight when this happened and now you knew that you had to deal with it, Peaches?
Yeah. So I was at school when he called. He called and said, Peach, come home. I got to tell you something. I'm like, no, tell me now. This is, so he told me on the phone that the test came back positive. So I rushed home and he was already home and we just held each other. We were both crying like babies. God, we just starting out with our family. Our children were young and now he came down with this. But the good thing was his was at a stage 2. So I was thinking, okay, stage 2, that's not too bad, and prostate cancer is treatable. That's one of the cancers that they say if a man would get, that's a good one to deal with. If that makes sense. Level 2, what is it? The
Yeah, like the Gleason score. Yeah.
right, the level, yeah. So in my head, I was like, okay, we could work at this, and 2 is not bad. We could get through this. So after we had that little crying moment, we just decided, hey, let's just get over this obstacle. We can do it with God.
Miriam, what about you? Relationship change. Now you're going from partner, but also caregiver. Did you think about that early on, or did that come later when it sort of hit you that I'm kind of a caregiver now?
Yeah, I think it hit me very immediately because of the spine injury situation, because there was very little he could do for himself. And then now we have this situation where the treatments, I mean, his cancer was aggressive. There was a Gleason score of 99, and, it was like, we have to treat this immediately. And I think that I felt this immediate, I'm now different. I'm his wife, but I have to make sure he's okay, and that's totally the definition of caregiver. And I didn't feel old enough I didn't feel qualified. I felt sad and overwhelmed for him to see him in that condition. He changed. I mean, physically, he looked different all of a sudden, and, it's almost like you have to put blinders on and just say, this is my new normal, as Janet said, and you just have to move. I tried to take it one day at a time. I was always saying, don't get ahead of yourself. Don't get ahead of yourself, one day at a time. So yeah, I knew immediately things were different.
Jen, what about you? When you realized, because Mark's going through some other things too, but did things change, and specifically with the prostate cancer, and then when did you realize you were going to be the caregiver?
Yes. Well, I tell you what, that early detection, and we had a great doctor, a great doctor. In fact, through prayer, praying for the doctor. Now, we were both veterans, so we did have the option to go and use the veterans hospital, but we chose to use our private health insurance. And we actually vetted the particular doctor that we have. And it was so good. He was just, that's what he did. And he saw my husband. He knew how to talk to my husband. He saw his reaction. He knew how to say, look, God, we got this. And he already laid out the treatment. He already told him what was going to do, what was going to happen, how we were going to do it. We were going to knock it out, 2 days of radiation. We're going to knock this thing out. And he told my husband, he said, yeah, and that's the way we're going to do this. And you can literally go back to your activities and, gardening, it's gardening out there in the garden. And he had one day of radiation and he was out there in the garden. I was like, wait, now you're not supposed to. He didn't mean, he said, he told me I could go back out there. You all know how he is. I was like, no, he didn't mean it like that. And that's just the kind of guy he is. And it was early. It was right after 2022. It was right after we'd come out of the COVID. And I credit you, Reggie, to asking me to read an article, edit an article for you. And in editing that article, that's how God works, though. That's how he works. I would have never looked at a PSA. My husband and I go take our physicals and everything together. He's a day older than me. He's a day older. So we do everything together. We health issues. But that right there, Reggie he said, do you know? I said, Reggie, you had prostate cancer? He said, yeah, what about Mark? And I was like, what about him? What's his PSA? I said, what is that? What are you talking about? I mean, just totally oblivious to it. And the doctors hadn't caught it. The VA doctors hadn't caught it. We were going there to get our blood test. They hadn't caught it because it was low. But what Reggie said was, hey, but it's creeping up. Reggie made me go back. He made me go get his scores from the last 3 years. I dug through all his medical records. My husband was clueless of what I was doing. And so he looked and Reggie said, Jan, it's creeping up. It's going up. You need to do something. Y'all got to do something. And I was like, so if God hadn't have put that in place for us to catch it so early, we wouldn't have caught it at all. So I was more, I guess, on the activism side. I was more on that end of it as opposed to on the caregiving side of it. I was the one that said, honey, and having a great doctor, having a good doctor, and then having someone I could talk to, you, Reggie, talk to you and say, hey, what's next? What's going to happen? What's this? What are our options? That was great for us.
I'm just glad everybody he beat it and he's doing well. Anita, let me ask you something. This question we kind of talked about before we started. Who did you lean on when I was going through this, or did you feel alone during that time?
I don't think I leaned on anybody. We kind of leaned on each other because I watched my father, who was diagnosed in a 4th stage, which had metastasized. And because I was so close to the research and project that we had been working on with Ralph, and I had quite a bit of knowledge and education about prostate cancer in the process. I don't remember leaning. My mother and father were both gone. I mean, I had friends, but I didn't talk to them a whole lot about, what I was going through in terms of dealing with your diagnosis. I remember because naturally I'm not a caregiver. I am not. But because you had a prior surgery on your knee replacement, I'd had a little taste of what it would be like, with you, caring for you. So I guess I didn't think too much about being a caregiver. And I didn't have I guess I talked to my brother some, and I have a friend that's very wise and up in years. And I may have talked to her about a few things, but the nature of it was kind of personal to me. So I didn't really talk to a whole lot of people about. I didn't hide the fact that you had it, but I never discussed in detail. I didn't really lean on anybody with what I was feeling, or, I talked to you. It was it.
I know you said you're not a caregiver, but you are, because I'm a big baby. So somebody
that you are. But at that time, I had not gone through that with you. So, and I had done, because my father had prostate cancer, I had transitioned us to what I thought was the optimal diet. I don't know if you remember, we were vegan at the time you were diagnosed. And we ate well. We had a pretty healthy lifestyle. So I guess in a sense was already a caregiver trying to make sure that we stayed healthy.
Miriam, what about you? Did you feel alone? Did you talk to anybody, your daughters, or did you, how'd you get through it? Or did you kind of like internalize it and just dealt with it?
Yeah, I felt that people tried to rally around me, but like Anita said, I just didn't feel comfortable talking about the things I was experiencing and what Tony was going through. And, Tony was always so strong in terms of how he presented himself, like, I'll be okay, I'm fine, even though he wasn't. And I knew that and I could feel it. And I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody. And I felt very alone and very sad about that, because I do like talking to people through things. And I just didn't feel that it was appropriate for me, because some of the things that men go through with that is you're just so shocked by it, right? And so you don't want to share that personal information with other people. But I will say that did cause me to get sick because I was so overwhelmed by caring for him. I ended up with 2 TIAs, one day where I had too many strokes. And I know it was because of making sure he was okay, making sure my daughter, who was pregnant at the time, was okay. So all these things were happening, and I probably just kind of crashed, had a little crash out. So, yeah.
Interesting. Did Peaches, you or Jan talk to anybody, or because it seems to be that most were sort of internalized, not internalized, but kind of kept it between the two of you?
I just wanted it just between us. But John, he was at church on the podium telling everybody. I'm like, oh gosh, he just
Being the advocate.
he told you about it too. I'm like, can you not? So I would tell him, can you not discuss this? So as a result, people were inviting him to come to different churches to speak. people are calling him from New York. Can you talk to my brother, my in-law? So he was telling everybody about it. So I'm like, let me go ahead and just tell it. Personally, I just wanted hush hush, because even though you felt this was a new journey for us, I think the person I leaned on the most is my mom. I would call her and share things with her and so on. But John just wanted to tell the whole world about this. And I just wanted him to just be quiet and just not talk about this. But Reggie, you know him, so.
Jan?
Yes, my husband is like your husband, Peaches. He got up in the pulpit, not in the pulpit, but he's a deacon at his church, and he went to the front, and I was really surprised that he did that. And he told all the men in the church that they need to get checked out. He called his brothers. He told them they need to get checked out. And there was little care that I had to take other than be there with him and the doctors. We're kind of open about stuff. So it wasn't, I called my friends and I asked for prayer. I asked for prayer. I called my prayer partners. We told the children. But when we told them, we said, hey, we had the news behind it. Like, he's only going to have 2 days of, I made sure we had everything so we could answer those questions.
Was that the case for, because everybody here, you all have kids, was that the case for how did you break that news to your children?
We had young children, so let's see, 2009, 2000. So one child was the older one was what, maybe 10. The younger was 5 or 6 or so. But we had to tell them, we had to break it down. I had to do my research as well to see what is this all about.
Did they have a lot of questions even at that age?
No, they were hung up on the cancer word, the big C. But other than that, we had to explain to them, and they just wanted to know what was next. What's next? What we were going to do with Daddy. That was basically it. Yeah.
What about you, Miriam, when you had to tell your daughters?
Yeah, both of my daughters were in their 30s. They still are. And again, remember, we had the spinal surgery, and then a couple of months later, we get this diagnosis. I think they just lost it. They were very upset and concerned. And my oldest daughter is a lot like her dad in that she researches everything. And, so she was doing her own research on the side, trying to understand, what he was really facing. And I would always check in with them just to make sure that they would kind of keep their emotions in check a little bit, so he wouldn't feel so. I mean, because he was going through so much, and I felt so bad for him. I think that was my biggest thing, is that I watched my husband just go through so much, and I wanted our daughters not to take that on, but to just pray and to try to support their dad the best way they could. But it was difficult because they were thinking, like, what's happening? Boom, boom. Is dad going to be okay?
So, Anita, we're going to get into the next part of this, and Anita's going to help me kind of walk through this. We're going to talk about intimacy a little bit. But before then, as we segue into that, Anita, I'm going to ask you about this. What's the biggest emotional toll that was on you in my journey?
Well, Armandi was part of the emotional toll. I don't remember when or how you told him. I just remember that he was away in boarding school, so he wasn't in the house. And I remember being concerned about how he would deal with that information. It was a lot emotionally because I had some fears and worries that I didn't want to express to you because I didn't want you to worry about me worrying. You know how that is. And so I just kind of soldiered on. I mean, there was a fear of loss, a fear of the loss of function and possibly the loss of life. And there was some fear about physical things. And there was a lot of unknown for me in spite of all of the research that had been done as it pertained to you personally. I just, it was a lot. It was kind of a lot emotionally to deal with because I felt like I had to remain very positive and not show, my fear. Of course, I worried about what if something happens to you and, you think about all those things and how would I survive that, right?
$1 million life policy. No, I'm just kidding. I'm out of here. I'm traveling the world. No, I'm just kidding.
Guys, I felt different from you, Anita. Maybe I looked at it maybe like a cold. He's just going to get over it. You know what I'm saying? That's how I approached it. I never thought about the dying part. I don't know why. I didn't go that route. My thing was, all right, we're gonna go through this. He's gonna get over it, and we're gonna be okay. And that was, that was my faith holding on to that. We're going to get through this and get over this hurdle together. And for some reason, I never thought about death, dying, and all that. I don't know why I didn't.
I do remember at the time that you were diagnosed that I don't believe we had health insurance. And so I had a lot of worries that perhaps may not be universal. Yeah, I had some emotional worry about how you were going to get treatment, how we were going to pay for that treatment. I think at the time, the country was going through this whole big battle about pre-existing conditions and all of that stuff. So I had some emotional, some roller coaster worry. Yeah.
I think you did better the second time around, because for those of you who don't know, I had what they call a chemical reoccurrence, which is basically saying that when I had my prostate removed, you should not have no PSA, right? There's nothing to produce PSA, but when it comes back and my PSA was gradually going up again, not anything high, I mean, because it was like under 1, but it started creeping up, and then they never found anything physically and on any scan, but because of the blood work, they knew it's not supposed to go up, that there is cancer somewhere if it does. So then I had to go and do a round of proton radiation, 37 treatments. And I think you kind of looked at it as, at that point, we're going to get through this. But anyway, got to do, what we got to do. So Anita, I'm going to let you take this next segment. You got the questions, so.
Oh, well, the, the next segment is, I guess the question is, in terms of intimacy, what changed and how did you navigate that?
I mean, I'll jump in. It changed, because it had to. And that is startling. And it is another reminder that your partner is ill. We're getting old, and you don't like it. I'm sorry, but you just don't like it. And you start to question, like, oh my gosh, will we ever be intimate again? All those things. And I think I didn't think about it a lot, to be honest. I was too busy taking care of him, but certainly it hit me at one point. But in the end, I just wanted him to be okay.
Mm-hmm. It was my husband more concerned about it than I was. I had to work with him. I had to be reassuring. I wasn't that, after 40 something years, I was like, okay, we're good. Give me a hug and a kiss. We're good. But it was him. It was him. I didn't want him to have to struggle and think about that. He was more concerned about that than he was anything. Okay. His manhood and how we're going to, and then, like I said earlier, new normal. We can figure this out. And a lot of things I had to just go online. I got involved with a support group, and I was getting all of this information about intimacy and things like that. That wasn't my problem. It was his issue, but it was for me, the wife, to say, it's going to be okay. We're going to work this thing out. We've had it's been great. It's been wonderful. We're going to work this thing out together. I had to be the reassurer that didn't matter to me. That didn't make you any less of a man. Okay.
Yes. So basically, there was really no guide to navigate this process. But, again, we're both in our 40s, even though he's a man, you gotta have it. But we had to find ways to get close and to show love, ways that were not expected. And we just had to try different things to connect. The procedure he had done was the seed implant plus radiation on top of that. So I thought he was going to turn green because I saw another brother at the church. He looked kind of green. I'm like, why is this man greenish? But I guess he went through the same process. But with John, even though he was a teacher, he could not be around children for so many months because of the radiation treatment as well. And then we had to use the condom for protection, for my protection as well. So we just had to find ways to navigate through this and, like I said, to connect with each other and show love to each other still. So
I'll have to say that with Reggie having his prostate removed, I guess nobody really tells you what, I mean, you read and you hear what the general process is to recovery from that, but it really is a personal recovery in the sense that everybody recovers differently at a different rate in different ways. And so I think for me, for us, like you said, Peaches, when you've been married a long time, intimacy takes a lot of different forms. And so you kind of have to transition from maybe so much of the physical to other forms of intimacy, like not just intercourse, but the intimacy of faith, okay? Faith and the intimacy of adversity, how you going through something traumatic together and surviving brings you closer together. There were things that I mourned, I missed, not all around intercourse, but there were things that had more to do with the difference between a man and a woman's body and the way a man functions and other things, you know what I mean? Visual things and physical things, but maybe not all related to intercourse, but just a different aesthetic, a different look, if you understand what I'm saying. So, yeah, I mean, and so I wanted to also ask what conversations were the hardest to have surrounding intimacy?
I think with his seed implant, they told him not to have sexual intercourse for so many months. So I think my fear too was, what if something happens to the condom, whatever? What if it breaks? That stuff would be me. That whatever they put in him with, So that was a concern too. So at times I just had to run away from him because I was kind of afraid of that, but keep in mind with me, I think I was in denial with this whole thing. I was. I didn't come to grips with it. I just didn't because I didn't want to believe it. I just knew God would take care of it and that we would get over this. You see what I'm saying? I think it's just my personality. I don't deal with things. I just, John will go up there and talk about it and talk. I'm like, please stop talking about this. And he would go and talk. And again, they were inviting him to different churches to come talk. Men's group were invited. I mean, he was telling everybody. People come from New York. Can you tell my brother? It was a lot, but that was his way of sharing. To me, I just wanted to bury it, just avoid it, ignore it. Do you know what I'm saying, ladies? Yeah. So I think I was in denial about the whole thing, Reggie. I really was.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it was difficult for my husband because he really felt the loss of his manhood, and I would definitely do what I could to reassure him that it's okay. You're not well, it's fine. But I think that it really bothered him. And just that loss of strength, even, to do simple things around the house, it felt very emasculating and it was hard for him. I think it was probably harder for him. He might think it was harder for me, but I could tell it was killing him inside, but he wasn't going to share that, because he's just not that kind of person that's going to openly share it. He wants to always be this strong person for me. And while I appreciate that, there were times I wish he would have just said it. Like, I don't feel like a man. I don't feel good, but I could see it. I could definitely see that. That was difficult.
Miriam, what type of procedure he had to help him?
Yeah, he had radiation. It was like 5 weeks of low dose radiation. And that was the other thing. I had to get up every morning and have him there by 6:30 for 5 straight weeks. So that was that. I am not a morning person. That tested me in every way. So, and then he had, I wrote this down because I knew I would remember, 3 sessions of high dose, which is the cyber knife, and then 2 years of hormone treatment, which was injections. And that ended last year. So he had a lot. Yeah. So, I mean, all this stuff is, in his body. He can't really be strong. So it was rough.
Plus, he was dealing with the other situation that got him in the hospital.
Still dealing with that. I mean, he's still not walking well. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's interesting, this listening. I think, they say to sit down with your significant other, your spouse, and talk about sex, to talk about intimacy, to talk about, okay, well, can't do this, let's do this, or what will satisfy you, what can we, and we just don't do that. Anita and I we have our way, but I don't think we never discussed the way. It just kind of happen. And I think too, with black men in particular, we were like, yeah, I just don't want to, we just gonna make it work, but I don't know if we want to sit down and have a plan. But they do say conventional wisdom is that it does work. It can work better when you get over those difficult conversations about intimacy. I will remember what Ralph said to me, Ralph Franklin, the fraternity brother who really this whole project got started because of his transparency. And I was diagnosed because of being involved with his journey. He just said that you're never going to be 100%. He said, if guys tell you I'm back 100%, they ain't telling you the truth, because you could be 95, you could be 85, you could even be 98, but you're not going to be the same, because the only way really in dealing with prostate cancer is to basically, as my urologist said, because I was asking him, he said, no. I said, well, what about the prostate itself? I mean, it's an organ. What happens? And he told me, we kill it. It doesn't function anymore, whether we take it out, whether we put radiation in it. There's some other techniques now that are coming that are partially treating the prostate, but his thing was, it's gone. And so my thought was, if it's gone and it's not functioning, then I'm not 100%. I'm not 100%. But I want to thank you, Anita, for leading that conversation. And thanks for each one of you for this section of being so transparent. I know this is something most people, like I said, don't want to talk about, let alone with other folk. But I will say that that's one of the issues if you go to any of the Facebook groups and things, there are as many significant other spouses on those groups than there are men. I mean, talking about these kinds of issues. And I think that us being able to discuss it tonight on this podcast is really going to help others that tune in, because I know that when they see that the women are talking, it's going to be okay. Even men were like, okay, what are they saying? What do I need to do? And I did have this kind of closing question. Of course, if there's some other things you want to talk about, please, let me know. But if your partner were listening to you right now, which could happen because they may watch the episode, what would you want him to truly understand about your experience? And Anita, I'm going to start with you because, like you're here with me. So I'm going to pretend like I'm not listening.
My experience wasn't your experience physically, but in every other way it was. I went through it. I didn't have my prostate removed. I used to tease you and say, I'm a man without a prostate. Get out of the way. I got to go to the bathroom. But no, I'm not a man without a prostate. But in every other way, your experience was my experience. I mean, I went through it with you, side by side with you. I won't say it was harder on me than it was for you, but it was just as emotionally and not physically taxing, but emotionally taxing, and the worry and the fear, and I was right there.
Yes, I like what Anita said, and I ditto her on that. I think a lot of I was 21-year-old bride, and we said the vows in sickness and in health. We said those vows. But when you're 21, you're not even thinking about in sickness and death. You're not even thinking that way. And you're not thinking that way in your 30s. And you're not thinking that way in your 40s. You're just not thinking. And even in your 50s, we had just retired. We had just retired. And we were starting to do the things that we said we always wanted to do. And I said, if I write again, I'd like to write a book about making our bed together. That's what we did. We had started getting up in the morning, making our bed together, because we couldn't make it before. We just couldn't make it. We were trying to get out the door. And then in making that bed, and you all, ladies all mentioned this, our faith, we started saying our prayers together on that bed. This is things that we never done before, and we grew into over our marriage. So we would make the bed, and we would get down on our knees, and we would say our prayers. No kids in the house, no job to go to, this was just so nice. And so we built that together, and I thank God that we did, because when we got the diagnosis, I just said we were ready. yeah, still in shock and oh no, and God, why us and this and me, and how we're going to pull this thing together. But now those words really meant something. Now they meant, how are we going to navigate this? How are we going to do this? We are sick. You're right, Anita. We are sick, and we are sick together.
Miriam, what about you? What would you want Tony to know to truly understand about your experience?
I think that I agree with the ladies that I experienced what he experienced. And I don't think, though, he realized how much I cried by myself, because when I watched him suffer, that was so hard. But I was always trying to be strong in front of him. I'm a cancer survivor myself. So I had breast cancer at 37, very aggressive breast cancer, went through all the treatments. So I know what cancer can do to you and how it makes you feel. And so I think that, I guess I just would want him to know that I was crushed, and, like Janet, Tony and I do devotions together. We have for many, many, many years. And I was still shocked. I'm like, okay, God. First, I'm human. I was like, what is happening? Why are you doing this to us? And then I realized, of course, like us, when he helped us find out about the prostate cancer through the spinal surgery, I'm just, I can see God's always working. And also that I learned so much from my breast cancer and how it just made me stronger as a person and not fearful of things that I used to be fearful of, that I was kind of like, this is going to happen for Tony too. So I knew that eventually he would look back and say, I don't regret it. I know God was with me. I know he has a plan for me. And I don't know what that is. And I've heard him talking to a lot of men from the church, supporting them in certain ways. He's not on the circuit like Peach's husband. But he has been the voice for somebody, some comfort for other men going through this. So we all have to look at everything as, we're grateful no matter what, no matter how hard it is. We know God is using us, and that's what's important in our lives.
Peaches, I don't think I asked you that. What do you want John to truly understand about your experience?
So, if you know my husband, John, just an easygoing guy. You can't help but love him. He's just a very loving guy. So, with our journey, everything I did out of love for him. And even when tired, I would still put in the 100% with him. Even when I felt alone in this journey, I still had to give 100% to keep moving. I should have kept a journal on this. And Reggie, you bring up a lot of feelings that I buried over the years. Remember, this was early 2000. And maybe if I'd kept a real nice journal on this, I could go back and look at what God brought us through. Because, like I said before, I think with me and my personality, I'd rather not face things 100%. I'll kind of bury it somehow. And I think if I kept a journal, I could go back and just look at all the little details and everything that both of us went through. So it was a growing experience for both of us. And, he's a good guy, he's a keeper. So everything I did for him was out of love for him.
So as we close out, since we started with a couple of words, let's end that way. Someone's watching this, their partner's diagnosed, or they're going through this prostate cancer journey. Couple of words of what you would say to them for encouragement.
You know my words. My words are always choose life over libido. It is not all about libido. It is about the totality and the wholeness of your life. So if you're married to someone and y'all been trucking along together, you can't give up just because somebody gets sick and loses the ability to do certain things. If that person has been your person all along, the journey is worth the fight.
Jan, you're the author here.
Well, one thing I wanted to say about intimacy is I read this, that praying together with your husband is one of the closest forms of intimacy, not sexual intercourse. Isn't that something? It's prayer. So if you haven't started praying with your husband, you need to start, whether he's diagnosed with cancer, prostate cancer, or whatever. If you truly want to get close to him, and I think Every one of these ladies tonight have mentioned their faith, and I think that's the intimacy that has kept us all together. That's what has kept us with our husbands, with longevity, able to come and talk and say, you're never alone. It's going to be all right. And I want to say this to Lauren, since I'm the writer. Lauren, it's never too late to start journaling. It's never too late to go back. And that's very therapeutic to do that. I do. I write. And in fact, that's what I did. I journaled, and I have all kind of journals. So it's never too late. If you don't want to talk to other people, then talk to the Lord through your journal.
So, Lauren, what about you? And then I'll end with Miriam.
Yes. So, John and I, we're both 70 Adventist Christians, and we are truly in love with the Lord. We put him first. We worship together. We go to church together each Sabbath morning, each Saturday. We pray together. We try to be leaders in the church and for couples to come and talk to us as well. Anyone who has, or to get the initial diagnosis, whatever, I would say to that person, just keep trusting in God and just believing in each other and just hold on to each other, because I think you're going to go through that process. I can't think of the process that they all go through. It's denial, and then you go through all these different stages, and then finally you accept it. I went through that. Yeah. So after accepting it, I just had to keep trusting and moving forward. So to anyone out there that is experiencing something like that, you just have to keep trusting, believing, and stick with your partner. Help your partner. You have to give up self. You have to put self in the background for a while and just focus on what your partner needs and help them to get healthy again and so on.
I think that what really hit me and what I would share with other people is that, I was immediately taken back to my wedding vows in sickness and health, for better or for worse. And I remember thinking that a lot as we were going through it. This is the opportunity to honor your vows. And when that's hard, of course, you rely on God's strength. There were days I didn't have the energy to make a meal, or, because I work full time too. And, it would be like, God, give me strength, because I need to honor this. And I may not have thought about it in that concrete way, but I know that in the back of my mind, it was like, if you're married long enough, you're going to get to that point, for better or worse, in sickness and in health. And I just kept saying that to myself. You can do this. You can do this.
Wonderful. Just on a side note, I remember, and it's on the video, our wedding video, when the minister, when she said, for richer or for poor, when she said for richer, when she said poor, Anita was like, yeah, that's immortalized on our wedding video. It's like, yeah, no, I don't know about that.
I just wanted to say something else came to mind as I listened to the other ladies speak about it. The in sickness or in health can be the shoe on the other foot. And so you have to think about how you would want someone to treat you, should it happen to you, because it could just as easily have been me that came down with a debilitating illness. So you go through your life, and you have to kind of remember that today is him, tomorrow it could be you. And you would want him to care for you and to be there and stand in the gap for you just as you do for him.
Well, on that note, I just want to thank each one of you for sharing. And I'm just going to say that your husbands, and me included, we are blessed to have women like you sticking by us, because I'm going to tell you that there are situations where relationships don't survive this. And we don't talk about it a lot. I mean, but the statistics are pretty up there with couples not being able to deal with this, and somebody leaves, and just to hear the strength tonight and the resolve, and we're all blessed to have you all in our corner. So thank you so much for doing this. I think it's going to really make a difference for others that tune in and watch it, and hopefully be an inspiration.
Can I clear one thing up? I didn't mean to say that when I heard the news. It was like cancer was like cold. Do you understand what I mean? To me, it's like, but did you get what I was trying to say? Yeah, I didn't take it that seriously. I should have, but to me, it's like, we're going to get over this. Yes.
It just sounded like faith to me.
Yeah, I think I said the same thing. That's how I felt. We're gonna get through this. Yes.
Yeah, we're going to get over this. I never thought about death or anything, but people can die from this, and they have. So, yeah, that's a reality too.
Well, we cleared that up. So you're good, Peaches. No, but thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you for inviting me to be on here and meeting these wonderful ladies.
Yes. Thank you. It was too good to leave, Reggie. It was too good to leave.
It's like we need to get together,
I
ladies. And
know.
Miriam, I will be praying for you. Janet, I will be praying for you.
I will. I have you all now on my list. That's right.
Yeah, there you go. Start your own group. Thank y'all so much. Appreciate you.
Thanks,
And
Reggie.
thank you.
Thank you, ladies, for just sharing, being transparent. Because tonight we heard like strength, we heard truth, and we heard what too often goes unspoken, because prostate cancer is not just his fight, it's their journey. And if this conversation has helped you, we ask you to share it, please, with those that you come in contact with. And if you want to learn more about the If You Are My Brothers project, the documentary, the podcast series, and also our community engagement work, you can always go to our website, ifyouaremybrothers.org. If You Are My Brothers is a project of the nonprofit 501c3 organization Straight Street Media. And it's Straight Street is dedicated to turning prostate cancer awareness into health action. That's what we like to call it, from health awareness to health action. And you can support us in our efforts. There are a number of different options. And when you make a contribution, we always want to remind you, you will receive your very own If You Are My Brothers mug, commemorative mug for you, just one of a kind. So you get that as our way of saying thank you for making a contribution, for supporting us. If you're listening on any of the podcast platforms, Apple or Spotify, we have all of that information in our show notes. We want to thank Atlanta Brand Central for providing the mugs for us. Thank you for making that contribution. Special thanks to our producer, Danny Garcia Pozo. And we also want to thank Zach Reynolds at Borkhouse Productions for our opening. And remember that this podcast is not a replacement for medical advice. Always talk to your healthcare provider. On that note, we want to thank you. Thank you for being a part of this. Thank the ladies for sharing. We'll be back again in a couple of weeks. We'll be talking about proton therapy as a treatment for prostate cancer. So you want to hang around and check us out for that on our YouTube channel or any of the podcast platforms. So until next time, I want to remind you, if you are my brothers, you will please share this message. Take care. Stay healthy. Peace.